Okay, thanks everyone for sticking with us through a long day, but a great day so far. So for our closing remarks, I'd like to welcome Jeremy Woodley from Google, who's the Director of Marketing Platforms. And from InfoTrust, rejoining us again is Michael Lobin, our Chief Growth Officer. Michael and Jeremy, over the past 3+ hours, we've had an incredible amount of content and thought leadership. I'm not sure how you're going to be able to distill it all and summarize it in 30 minutes, but best of luck with that. So Michael, bring us home.
Thank you so much, Pat. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello. Nice to see everybody. Well, see you and be in front of everybody else.
Pat, maybe I can distill it in one quote from Ray Bradbury. Life is trying things to see if they work. That probably accounts for a lot of things that we've discussed today. Starting with Sean's keynote, performance is not at odds with privacy, and we have to think consumers first, thinking long-term, and culture of experimentation. Jeremy, what stood out to you? What are some of your takeaways from this day?
Well, I've been with Sean on this journey for quite a long time. I've worked for him for 8 years, and he's been a real leader within Google on these kind of topics. And so I just want to reiterate what he's saying, to be honest with you, that it does take a spirit of adventure right now to be able to take the steps down this path. But there's a lot of rewards on that path to taking control over your own first-party data, having better connections with consumers, and being able to extract value from those relationships with your marketing. There's a lot of benefits for looking into the future and being able to future-proof yourself for big industry changes, and fundamentally put the consumer at the center of your business and listen to them and have a relationship with them that's valuable to them and respects their desires to have privacy controls. I think it can be a little scary, but I do think there is an interesting positive spin to all this, where we end up in a better place with our relationships with consumers and have better control over our marketing, more so than we had in the past. So, I just encourage everybody, it's just a process. We have to start taking steps down the path and start making progress toward that future.
Oh, fantastic. And I think just you mentioned that Tyler mentioned it in the previous session, really the idea that there's got to be so much optimism in this. I think it's very easy with all of these changes happening to start getting negative. There are so much unknowns. How will I get out of this? But yeah, there's so much optimism. Look at so much innovation that is happening in this space right now, like never before.
Yeah, the way you start the story is often a very negative story, right? Like, change is coming. Apple's doing this, Google's doing that. I've got to worry about digital privacy regulations, things like that. But I think ultimately there's a much better positive story for most companies and brands, that there is an opportunity to put the consumer at the middle of their story, of their business, and to build a good relationship with them, develop more first-party data experiences and connections, be able to mine those for better marketing and better outcomes you care about fundamentally. There's just a lot of opportunity in this journey that puts us in a direction I think is more fundamentally good for everybody. And I'll give you a real concrete example. I think when you're thinking about media mix and how to allocate your media spend to different channels, MMMs have been around for a long time, but they've been run on an annual basis or a semi-annual basis, and use model data to be able to assess the value of different channels, like a television or radio or print or digital, to keep achieving outcomes for the company. I think as we look at embracing modeling as a future for also digital advertising, it allows us to bridge those worlds, to take modeling on digital experiences and bring it and compare it on a more frequent basis to offline experiences, and be able to really understand how you impact consumer journeys from different ways. But that's predicated on embracing a fundamental core of what we're talking about, which is moving away from precision era to predictive era ways of measuring our digital marketing. So that could be a real positive aspect for any given CMO, to be able to use a modeling that you use to understand your digital advertising, to also evaluate your print and your television and other things like that. So this is a small example of how this is pushing us, I think, in a better direction for a lot of brands out there.
So I have to ask you a question based on what you just said, going from precision to predictive. The reason I bring this up, because even think today, although all of these changes are happening, it's still very easy to get in this discussion, well, our Google Analytics data is 5% off from our CRM data, or it's 5% does not match here, or between the other platforms. And yes, we certainly, hypothetically, right, we understand, well, this is likely to continue to happen, and the gap is going to continue to widen. But how do we explain this to our leadership that might be looking at this and say, well, that doesn't match up, I cannot trust any of this, go and redo. And well, it's not possible to redo it, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think this is one of the false levels of precision we have from the cookie-based world, the digital identity world we live in now. There's a false sense of like specificity around of what you can get, and you can map potentially all the different interactions you have with the consumer and be able to understand the exact path by which they, go experience your brand and go, you go achieve outcomes with them you care about. I think it's been false from day zero, and I've been in this industry for over 12 years. There's always been a lack of data in some respects. And one thing that might not be always obvious to those that don't work in a platform business like Google's is that we've had to use modeling for many years to be able to do basic things like reach and frequency management. Like we haven't had all the data we want because people turned their cookies off in the past. And more recently, Apple's, approach to privacy and cookie generation have eliminated identity in those environments for a long time, and it's accelerating. So a lot of the tools out there, ours included, are using predictive approaches and modeling to be able to do something as basic as frequency and reach management, and been doing a good job of it for years. And I think what we have to understand is like there is a way to bridge into the future and be able to do that with this kind of marketing, this digital marketing on a go forward basis. And I think we all probably could do with a refresh of how we talk about this amongst the platform providers, the service providers, the brands out there, to understand, you don't have that level of precision in other types of marketing, and you believe in that efficacy, and you understand that there is a little bit of squishiness, that directionally you have good information, and you have the ability to test and iterate and try different approaches. And I think we just have to understand that's true for digital as much as it's true for print and television, right? But that we actually, with our DNA, we're going to want to measure this in a real way, in a very sophisticated way. So why don't we bring that DNA into that modeling world and run things like MMMs on a weekly or monthly basis? That's a challenge to us all, so we can understand the value of your channels effectively, all the time, and be able to iterate and test and experiment in different ways to see, if there are different ways to reach consumers and how effective they are. So I think it's an interesting reset moment, right, for us all. Across all forms of advertising, and it's fun to do this kind of work and to do it with partners like yourselves. With this, you guys bring such sophistication to the table on this topic and such capabilities.
Let's talk about that for a moment, because I'm sure that out of a couple hundred people that are watching this right now, and more that will watch the recording of this, somebody is probably looking at this and thinking, MMM, that sounds great, but who within my organization, right? We already are strapped, and on one side, I keep hearing we gotta do more in-house. On another, I keep hearing, look, you have to work with partners. You want to work with partners. What's your take on this? How organizations should be thinking about what we continue to build in-house, and how do we focus on our core business? Where do partners come in? Share some thoughts on the topic.
It is a bit of a polarity, is a framework I like, where there's these different ways of talking about something, where you often get caught up saying one is right and one is wrong. Local versus global is a good one, but it's not that there's a right or wrong. It's just in a moment in time you're swinging between the polarities, and you have to understand where you are right now. I think fundamentally, I think what we're looking at is a moment that's, if you broaden our lens even further beyond this big change in the industry, is you're seeing a moment of digital transformation for most enterprises across all aspects of their business. And I think the pandemic has highlighted that in really very interesting ways in big industries like media and entertainment, and consumer packaged goods and fast food, those kind of things, retail operations, that there is an opportunity. They're seeing this acceleration of digital touch points throughout with consumers, and the ability to understand and track that, and have understanding of like the value of that, and create efficiencies perhaps, but also it creates a lot of complexity, right? It creates a lot of complexities. It breaks normal silos within the organization. It requires a different way of thinking about the organization. So there's in this polarity, outsourcing well, using a service partner versus doing it yourself. I think you need to be able to do both. Like you need to be able, as an enterprise, be able to own your own data, right? You have to be able to create like the right data sets and the right experiences that drive the right value to consumers, and then that generates data that then you can mine for like what makes that valuable, and you have to be able to then connect the dots between different parts of that experience, between different data lakes, if you will, of experience within your enterprise. So like in that sense, you need to be able to very primarily own that digital experience and be able to then extract value for the consumer, give value to the consumer, and extract value in terms of data from them. So that's what you as an enterprise need to do. But it's really hard to do that in all aspects of enterprise well without, you just aren't going to have all the people. Most people are not digital natives like a Netflix or an Amazon, right? They don't naturally understand how to operate in this very digital context and be able to get that data. So you're going to have to rely on service partners to be able to do that. You know, companies like yourselves, like InfoTrust. It is important that you be able to like play in both areas. So I think that's how I'd summarize it. Like, go own your experiences, go own the data you have, but look toward your partners to be able to provide value in developing those experiences, perhaps. Doing analysis on those experiences, and you have the ability with a company like yourself to like pick and choose where you have people that do it versus where an InfoTrust has people who do it, right? Like you have modularity and the ability to do that. So hopefully that helps, but that's my perspective. I think you need to be able to do both, like, because you can't walk away from owning those customer relationships,
of course,
but at the same time you can't possibly do everything, right? It's just too much.
So you've mentioned the owning customer relationships. Obviously, it's a big theme throughout the conference today, and the importance of first-party data strategy. So the message, it seems like, has been covered quite a bit, not just today, but even over the past couple of months, as everyone is saying this, yet not everyone is doing it. Do you have any suggestions on how to finally kind of put your stake in the ground and say, this is what we are after when it comes to our first-party data strategy?
It's so contextual to the brand, but I will give you some elements we're seeing within Google. And we obviously work with virtually every type of company around for digital marketing. So I do see a little bit of a broader based. A simple thing that I've been talking about this for many, many years is mobile experience. Like, so many people are accessing your brand through mobile environments, whether it's an app or a website. I almost can't believe I'm still saying it, but you still have to invest in that, and most people have not done enough. Our search business sees like really tremendously positive returns on digital advertising when you have a good mobile web landing page. Which is like such a table stakes 2008 kind of thing, it feels like, and yet it still is there. Related to that is as a commerce experience that you can really have a good deep relationship with the consumer, even as like a CPG, even if you don't you make toothpaste, you're going to sell toothpaste through retail stores, but sometimes maybe you sell it directly for some reason, and that kernel of first party data, that those relationships is a kernel can use, a spine of information to understand how consumers generally respond to your brand and different experiences, right? So it allows you to do things through your channels effectively as much as directly, right? So there's a value in that. Even within the commerce experience, even if you don't have to rely primarily on your own shopping experience, you have merchant feeds, right? That you send to Amazon through their shopping experience, or to Google through our shopping experience. You have a relationship with maybe Shopify to handle the sort of the back end of the experience and be able to handle the merchant experience, the billing and such. All those can be optimized and made better, and most brands are simply not far enough along the curve along there, and that's where a lot of the opportunity lies. I think we saw a lot of very traditional brands flip from 80-20 offline, if we will, bricks and mortar, e-commerce, to the opposite during the pandemic, and they had to make very quick choices about like how they're going to do that, what they're going to do about how to make that experience worthwhile, if only to keep their business afloat until they can go back to their real retail ops. But now that that the retail operations are coming back, they're seeing like a really interesting relationship with consumers when they had it more direct and through their commerce experience. They want to grow that and continue doing that. And it also changes your relationship to marketing and advertising, because if your storefront is your marketing, right? If the way you reach consumers and bring them in through the door is not having a really good storefront and a great location, but you have like a really good marketing and presence, collaboration with other companies, then that changes how you do things. There's just a lot in there you have to unpack. And I honestly, that's where a good strategic partner like InfoTrust or others that can do this work will be really valuable. Those are just a couple examples. There's many other ways to improve those first-party experiences from a digital perspective. I mean, as a consumer myself, like I'm always very frustrated with the inability of a company to understand who I am when I have a very direct relationship in different contexts, as on the phone versus chat versus email. You know, it's very disjointed. It's a classic problem for many enterprises that still isn't solved. But there's a lot of meat on the bone, if you will, a lot of opportunity. And to take Sean's point earlier, like we just need to have an adventurous mindset and start down this path. We need to start investing in this and getting there. And the nice thing about this, again, is that as you invest in things, these kind of things that are very future-proof, very durable, you're also investing in just fundamentally in your business and very interesting digital experiences that will yield much better relationships with consumers. And that's a good thing, but in both ways, both in a negative and a positive way.
Now, ultimately, building relationship as a consumer is as durable as it gets, right? No
Yes.
matter what happens to the technology, but those connections, that trust that you generate with the consumer, that will always stay with your brand, with your organization. And, you know, one of the things that I like when you listed those options, what the organization can and should be doing, again, to those who are attending the summit, it's not about let's go and do all of them tomorrow before the end of the week. It's the question is how do we design our experimentation matrix, and how do we start playing with 2 or 3 or 4 of those and seeing what the data is telling us. And we will likely see that, hey, some of these tactics are not right for us. And that's fine. But if you are not doing anything, you are likely going to be in a much worse shape than many of your competitors.
Yeah, I thought Sean made a good point earlier. Like the really adventuresome marketers that we work with, they fail a lot, and you have to be okay with failure. Failure doesn't mean there's no value in it. It's a lot of cases you still have some portion of the experiment that results in good successes, but also you learn faster when you fail.
Exactly.
And the edge of that envelope, then that means you're pushing out ahead. And it's just a moment of change, deep industry change right now. And moments of change are also, I mean, they're scary, but they're also opportunities quite substantially for, you know, companies that can take advantage of them.
One other topic that I wanted to discuss with you was something that Sean mentioned was around last mile, right? How do we make analytics part of our day-to-day practices? So it's not just something that you know, analytics, big data, modeling exists somewhere within the organization. It's something that all of us get to benefit from. And certainly the culture of analytics, the culture of experimentation is so important. Do you have any suggestions as you meet with organizations for how to drive that culture of almost last-minute analytics, right? When it's available to all of us and used widely?
Yeah, it's a dangerous one for me because it is very contextual again. It's very much about what each company needs to do. One thing that we've seen that really resonates is attaching, as much as possible, finding a way to attach your marketing and advertising efforts against clients' business outcomes that matter fundamentally. Selling a car, raising brand awareness. It might be intermediate metrics, but let's maybe not talk about click-through rate or CPA, right? Like, let's get a little bit closer to what the company really cares about. And that makes it more apparent that the marketing and advertising you do isn't just a cost center, but a profit driver, right? That it has a fundamental role in what you're doing as a business that is very interesting and very positive. And that's going back to what I was talking about earlier, this idea of, you know, thinking about your marketing as your storefront. It's the way you talk to consumers in a very real way, and that it's not just a way to enhance the experience you have in other places, but as a primary way to have that. I think it's a good way to think of it. If that's the case, then you need to tie that marketing and advertising to the outcomes you care about, selling some shoes or, you know, driving retail traffic in a coffee shop or something like that. Like if you aren't thinking that way, then it's hard. That's very vague. I admit it, but that's the best answer I can give to you without like getting into the details of a given company, right? Where I think again, your team is very good at understanding what they're trying to do and connecting those dots.
And ultimately, it is how do we generate value for our organization? And certainly, business value for each organization is dependent on their business, but everything that we do has to be tied to that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
So what does a 30, 60, 90-day plan look like as organizations begin thinking about this, and where should we start? What should we be accomplishing over the next 1-2 months? What are your recommendations for next steps?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, right now it's a classic, very simple 30, 60, 90, where you needed to assess where you stand today. Like that is the very first step. You need to take a step back, talk to some of your peers. If you have friends in the industry that are going through similar things, other CMOs, other VPs of marketing, director of marketing. It's good to hear what other people are doing. Talk to your platform partners like ourselves. Talk to your service partners like InfoTrust. Many of them, including you guys, are offering these kind of these durability assessments. Google's working very hard to provide tool sets and frameworks to our partner ecosystem to be able to like run those on our behalf and the way we think about it. And InfoTrust brings, I know, a lot of thought leadership on this topic. But look at where you are, like how much you rely on traditional cookies, how much you rely on traditional digital identity, and how you can start to migrate. So that's the first step, an assessment, right? The 60 to 90 thing is where you start to think about then what is the path to start to bring in some durable experiments that make the most sense, right? Durable approaches and tactics. You're probably doing a lot of things that are quite durable already. Maybe amplify those, or look at ways to do iterative tests where you kind of do an A/B test of a durable approach that complements a more traditional approach to doing marketing. One example that is available today is geo-based attribution, which is a regression econometric model that looks at marketing at a zip code plus 4 kind of level, and looking at outcomes when you target at a geo-based level that drive outcomes you want on the other side of the business. And because there's no direct connection, there's no cookie required, it's very much like it's very much a statistical model looking at that. But we've been running those models for a while. I know you guys are good at them too. For the right kind of company, that's a very interesting test to run right now if you haven't done it before. Like see if if you have trying to drive traffic to certain retail locations, if you target at a certain geographic level, how that affects that retail traffic is an example. So start to look at the existing bench of opportunities that to do durable and start to experiment and start to migrate. Longer term, you look at 90 days plus, there's going to be other things coming, like new ways of audience targeting, like Flock and Fledge within the privacy sandbox and Chrome that will become available on our platform over the summer. We'll make available to our partners like InfoTrust soon to be able to do that. There's a measurement API coming there that you'll be able to get to. But these are all things that I think are a little bit further out, and we can do things now today that we don't have to wait for the big splashy ones that are on the trade press. There's a lot of great durable tactics available today. I think for a measurement analytics partner like yourselves that are, I think the one that I would very much press on in a long, in that 90-day framework is starting to look at the opportunity to run cookieless attribution across a part of the business and different ways. It's a different way of measuring this versus like multi-touch attribution or other more direct precision era approaches. Start to run more statistical models on measuring your capability or the impact of advertising, and start to understand how that can, you can maybe migrate to that increasingly as cookies go away. We're just seeing, that identity spine to degrade quite quickly. Maybe 60-70% of current programmatic inventory has a cookie or a device ID there now, and it's getting smaller with Apple's changes, and as consumers become more sensitive to this and turn off cookies. So it's just, the reality is this is not getting any better, if you will. It's, we're going the other way on identity. So, the more that you can use, modeling to be able to assess the value of what you do, the more important, the more you'll be able to operate in this environment.
Brilliant. And this kind of reminds me of popular saying, right? Don't wish that things were easier, wish that you were better. And today, throughout the presentation, and we heard so many different tactics, ideas. You just mentioned cookieless attribution, other modeling options that are available to organizations. So we really laid out plenty of ideas and tools, tactics that everyone can start leveraging to really become even better at digital analytics, digital marketing. And there's certainly a very opportunistic future in sight.
Yeah. That analogy, I like that one. I'm a big bike rider and one of the heroes of the sport. I think I'm paraphrasing it badly. Spoke like as you get better, the pedaling doesn't get easier. You just go faster. Yeah, this is what it is.
Any final thoughts for the audience? Anything, any recommendations that you have?
Well, I think one thing, if you're here, this is great because you're already working with one of our best partners in the space around measurement and analytics. Thank you for working with us and working with InfoTrust. They've been an incredibly great partner in the U.S. for us for many, many years. So you're already off to a good start. I think one thing I would go back to again to the very beginning. Sean's messages are always good. Put the consumer at the center of your business and think about what they want, both in terms of digital privacy and respecting that, and then therefore migrating to a future we think that respects that, but also think about like the experiences that value them and how you can enhance those and build upon those, which then helps your privacy journey, right, through this. And then again, like this is something as we go down this path, like the reason Google wanted to talk about this, the Google Ads part of our business wanted to talk about this early without Chrome having made its final decision on when they're going to deprecate cookies. We wanted to go down this path with everybody, with our partners and with our advertisers. We wanted to have that blinker on for 20 plus blocks. We wanted to be able to take this journey together. It's a very much an iterative model. I think, we really, really welcome people to embrace that and provide feedback along the way. I think as an industry, it's an opportunity for us to take this path together. And like I said earlier, like improve the digital advertising experience and the outcomes we're trying to drive over time. There's just a lot of upside in this. And it's not all downside. And then to close, performance is not at odds with privacy. We can have both, and we're convinced of that, and I hope everybody else will see the same. At the end of the day, we're all trying to talk to consumers and have a relationship with them, and consumer sentiment has changed. They want to have more control over digital identity. We need to respect that, and so we just need to kind of rebuild our architecture around that, and we're confident we can do that. That all the advertising use cases we have out there today can be done in the future in this new architecture. So thank you for the time.
Jeremy, thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next summit.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Pat, back to you.
Awesome. Great summary and wrap up, Jeremy and Michael. Thank you so much. And Jeremy, I saw what you did there with the old bike reference and the whole Peloton giveaway. Very clever. You were not eligible to win, though, so sorry to drop that news on you. But thank you all for joining.